is going on, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to episode 107 of the Greyt podcast. On today's episode, I am giving my early top 10 for next season. I was going to do this a week or two ago, got sick, wanted to do a mock draft, some things changed, so we're going to do that for this episode. We'll see how quickly we get through this. I'm not gonna lie, I had a little bit more trouble than I thought I would coming up with this top 10, but I like where it's sitting at. It's a rough draft, though. Keep that in mind. The list is fluid. Okay, the list is fluid, especially the back half of this. I really had trouble with the order. I knew what teams, and the 10 spot was grueling, man. I had a bunch of teams up for that 10 spot. And we're going to start with 10 and we'll go to 1. At 10, I have Oklahoma. I heavily considered Miami for this position. Miami bringing in Darian Mensah, bringing in his wide receiver duo from Duke, and also bringing in Damon Wilson. Those are really good additions. And plus everything they're also bringing back. I just have concerns with the offensive line not having Francis Mauigoa anymore. I have concerns with that defensive line not having Akeem Mesidor, not having Ruben Bain. And look, I think Damon Wilson's a really good player. I just don't think he's at the level of a Ruben Bain or Akeem Mesidor. Maybe Akeem Mesidor. He might be better than Akeem Mesidor. He's not on the level of a Ruben Bain, in my opinion. So I have some concerns. Also losing Keontae Scott at corner. So I have some reservations when it comes to this Miami team. So I ended up going with Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma, John Mateer, obviously is coming back to be the quarterback. Running back, they have Torrey Blaylock. They have Xavier Robinson. Transfer portal, they did fine. They didn't do a ton. It really just felt like they brought in kind of just filled holes, really. The main things they did were at wide receiver, which was necessary. They brought in Trell Harris from West Virginia. And they brought in the main guy, which was Parker Livingstone from Texas. I think those will be two really nice pieces for John Mateer. But really what this will come down to is whether or not John Mateer, his health situation. Let me just put it that way. His health situation. Obviously, earlier on in the season before the injury, he was playing really good football for Oklahoma. And then the injury happened and he was just very inconsistent. At times you would see the flashes of what he was, but for the most part he was very off target. And look, Oklahoma was still able to make it to a bowl game, even with that. And this defense under Venables is always going to be good. I keep hitting my mic. Goodness gracious. This defense is always going to be good under Brett Venables. That we know is going to happen, even with the loss of a guy like Gentry Williams, even though he has spent a while hurt. I still really like this Oklahoma team, and I think defense alone could have them at the back half of this top 10 and around that bubble area, around the 10, 11, 12 range, which, hey, could be good enough to skate your way into the playoffs, depending on how everyone else is next season. Now, next on this list, a team who made the playoffs this past season, a team who's known to be very good in the transfer portal, and that is the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Now, I think a big thing that prohibited Texas Tech from winning a playoff game and from even being really competitive against Oregon was the quarterback play. Baron Morton is simply not a good quarterback. Brendan Sorsby is better. Now, I think Brendan Sorsby is being slightly overrated. I mean, people are acting like this guy is just the second coming. Look, I think he's good. I think he did some good things at Cincinnati. and I definitely think he's better than Baron Morton. So there is that. I just don't think this will lead them to where people necessarily think. I think could Texas Tech win a playoff game? Sure. But they lost a lot on that defensive line. They lost Lee Hunter. They lost Romello Height. They're losing David Bailey, who I think should be a top 10 draft pick. They're losing some things here. Okay? And now look, they brought some things in. We know how Texas Tech does. They brought a lot of people in. I mean, they brought in Malcolm Simmons, a wide receiver from Auburn. He's a really good player. They brought in Adam Trick, an edge from Miami of Ohio. I think he has a ton of potential, but I think there's question marks on how he'll do here at a higher level. I love my favorite addition is Mateen Ikbarakba, defensive tackle out of Wake Forest. I think he's an amazing player. I think that was a really good get for a Texas Tech. They're bringing in Trey White, edge out of San Diego State. They're bringing in, obviously, Brendan Sorsby from Cincinnati, as we know. Austin Romaine, a linebacker out of Kansas State. I know he was highly sought after. I know Texas Tech really wanted him. And while I think that this is a good class, I don't think it's anywhere close to how good their class was last year. And so while I think they'll be the best team in the Big 12, and I think they will be for the future here, I have a ton of questions still about how they will perform once we get into the playoffs and they're playing big Big Ten SEC opponents. That's still a big question mark for me. So that's Texas Tech at 9. At 8, another team in Texas who was also in the playoffs this past season, who lost a close game in the first round to a team that eventually went on to be the runner-ups in the oh my gosh, I just had a brain fart, the college football national championship, and that's the Texas A&M Aggies. Now, as much as I think that Marcel Reed is overrated, I can't deny that Marcel Reed has his pop-off games and has that pop-off potential. And also, I think that they have a really good coach. And I think that their defense is getting better and better. I just need to see Marcel Reed be better in big games and be more consistent. And a part of that is them adding stuff around him. Like I love the Isaiah Horton addition from Alabama. I think he is a very good player. And I think he'll be really good for Alabama. I love the Ricky Gibson, corner from Tennessee. I love that addition. I love the CJ Mims addition, defensive tackle from North Carolina. This is all in the transfer portal. I absolutely love the Anto Saka addition from Northwestern, an edge rusher. I love all those additions, okay? I just need to see Marcel Reed be more consistent if I want to put this team any higher than I currently have them. But again, I think that the potential is there. At 7. Oh boy. This one, Big Ten fans will hate this one. And people who are fans of this team will hate this and will think that this doesn't make any sense because of the season that they just had. It's Indiana. I have it 7. And I'll explain why. Indiana just had an incredible season. And they were by far the best team in college football. They were also an older team. And I think if we think to ourselves that what they just did is going to just be a yearly occurrence, I think we're kidding ourselves. Look, Indiana did great once again in the transfer portal. There's no denying that. I love the addition of A.J. Harris, corner from Penn State. Shaz Preston's a solid wide receiver from Tulane. I think that Josh Hoover has the potential to be... I don't think he'll be Fernando Mendoza good at Indiana, in part because I think Fernando Mendoza simply had a ton more talent around him than Josh Hoover will have. But I think Josh Hoover has a ton of potential to be a really good quarterback. Turbo Richard is a solid running back from Boston College. Is there anyone else? I feel like I'm missing someone big. Oh, I like the Preston Zachman addition, the safety from Wisconsin. I think he's really underrated. And then obviously Nick Marsh from Michigan State was a big addition. Here's my issue. You're losing a ton. A ton. You're losing Pat Coogan, your center. You're obviously losing Fernando Mendoza. You're losing Hemby, your running back. You're losing 2 wide receivers and Omar Cooper and Elijah Surratt. 2 people who, oh my gosh, Signetti. I'm having brain farts when it comes to coaches' names. 2 people that Signetti, by the way, did not bring to Indiana. Omar Cooper and Elijah Surratt were both already there. And you're losing a few pieces on defense like a D'Angelo Pons. And and Kamara, I just think you're going to see some regression. I still think this team will be good because Signetti's a good head coach and they still have talent. But I do not think under any circumstances, I don't think this team's going to be a national title contender next year. Okay? And I could come to eat those words, to be fair. I could totally come to eat those words. I just don't see it. Okay? I really just don't. I think this is going to be a much less talented team than the one Indiana just had. All right, this top 6, these are who I think are the true national title contenders, in my opinion. Okay? It starts here at 6. I think there's 6 national title contenders. Now, here at 6 is a team that I'm scared to even do this because I was made to look like a fool by this team last season. Since January, I planted my flag, January of last year, I planted my flag for this team, and they betrayed me. They stabbed me in the back. They made me look foolish. But I can't lie. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid again, and I believe in them again. It's the LSU Tigers at 6. And it took me a lot to not put them higher. I was tempted to put them at 4. Okay? They weren't top 3. I don't think they're top 3, in my opinion. I think there's a certain 3 teams who are top 3. But I am putting them at 6. I was tempted to put them at 4, but I had to give them a 2-spot deduction for them doing me dirty last season. Okay, so they're at 6. I loved what LSU did in the transfer portal last season, and I was right, by the way. They got some really good additions. Mansour Delane is going to be a first-round draft pick. A.J. Halsey will be a day 2 pick. Okay? But as it turned out, Brian Kelly was not seemed to be fully invested in being the head coach of LSU. I love Lane Kiffin as a head coach. I think he's really good for LSU. And man, have you seen this transfer portal class? I mean, oh man. I mean, Jordan Seaton at tackle is going to be phenomenal. Princewell Umanumalen, his older brother, when he was at Ole Miss with Lane, he did great things with him. I can only imagine he'll do great things with him here. TJ Daugherty is a solid add at linebacker from Ole Miss. He got Mansour Delane's little brother, Fahim Delane, by the way, from Ohio State. He's a safety. Can only imagine he'll be good. Getting a Devin Harper, an interior guy from Ole Miss. Obviously, a lot of Ole Miss guys here. Obviously, he got Sam Levitt, which there are some concerns as far as injury is concerned with Sam Levitt. But he also got Husan Longstreet as insurance. And I think that was really smart of Lane to do. Let me see. He got a ton of wide receivers. I mean, a ton. I love Jordan Ross, by the way, edge out of Tennessee. I think he's a really good player. I think he was the best edge rusher on Tennessee. You know that they got a lot of transfers when you're looking at their list of transfers and you have to load more. I mean, goodness gracious. Oh, I see. Okay. Wait. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Why is it showing me people who transferred out? Okay, I was trying to find the wide receivers. I finally found them. Eugene Wilson the third. I wanted Georgia to nab him. LSU did, and that's a really good get for them. Jace Brown. I don't know if it's Jace or JC, but I think it's Jace Brown. Wide receiver out of Kansas State. Really electric. Going to be really good for LSU. Ty Benefield, I've heard a lot of good things about. Safety from Boise State, so we'll see how that goes. Also, Trey Brown from Old Dominion, a wide receiver. Just a ton. Jackson Harris, a wide receiver from Hawaii. And I feel really good about LSU. And I think they have a coach who really cares, who really is going to try and do really great things for this program. And I think LSU is going to be dangerous next year. They come in at number 6 for you, boy. At number 5. Look, I don't like this team. I don't like them one bit, but I can't deny the fact that they have a really good coach and they have a really good football team going into next season. And that's the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They did solid in the transfer portal. They got Mylan Graham from Ohio State, wide receiver. They got Keon Cayley, edge from Alabama. Quincy Porter, another wide receiver from Ohio State. They got Jaden Sanders, a cornerback from Michigan. And they got DJ McKinney, a corner from Colorado. They didn't get many people in the transfer portal, but the guys they got are highly impactful, and that's what matters. Not to mention, this team is bringing back quarterback CJ Carr. They're bringing back a lot of talent from last season. A team that many people argued should have been in the playoff. And if they would have been in the playoff, they would have made a ton of noise. And I agree with that. And I think Notre Dame could potentially be a very dangerous team next season, especially considering their schedule is significantly easier for this upcoming season. Unlike last season, which is why they ended up not getting in because their schedule was difficult and they lost Texas A&M and Miami. But we'll see. We will see. I think this Notre Dame team's going to be good. And Marcus Freeman is, in my opinion, a top 3 coach in college football. So, actually, no, yes, I do believe that. Top 3 coach. Where am I at? 4. Okay. At 4 is a team that I have a ton of questions about, and I'm not going to lie. The only reason that they're at 4 is because even though I have a ton of questions about this team, you can't deny the fact that they're pretty consistent when it comes to being a top 5 team, and that's the Ohio State Buckeyes. I have a ton of question marks about this team, okay? They are losing a ton of players, especially on the defensive side of the ball, okay? Look, they're bringing back Julian Sayin, who I think last season was one of the more overrated quarterbacks. He stat padded against terrible competition. The only time Ohio State played an actual good team, he looked mediocre at best. They're bringing back Jeremiah Smith, obviously, for his last season. They're losing Carnell Tate. They're losing Max Clare. They're losing... Are they losing any offensive linemen? I don't remember. But the defensive side of the ball is where they're losing a ton. Obviously, the main one being Caleb Downs. And I think that's a massive loss. I think Caleb Downs makes a defense instantaneously better by himself. I think he's that generational. I think he's that good. Okay? Plus, they're losing Davison Igbinosun, corner. Plus, they're losing Arvell Reese. Plus, they're losing Sonny Styles. Plus, they're losing Caden McDonald. Okay? And there's others. it's a concern. This defense is going to be a concern. And we'll have to see. Now, they did solid work in the transfer portal. Nothing flashy. They're very Ohio State, what I've realized, Ohio State and Georgia are very similar in the transfer portal. I think Ohio State will spend more money than Georgia will when they absolutely need to, as you saw when they bought a championship last season. Anywho, but this transfer portal class is very Georgia-like. They didn't get all-star guys. They just got guys that filled holes that they believed they had, and a lot of it was just adding depth. Okay, like they added a corner from Georgia, Dominic Kelly. He's a solid player. Kyle Parker from LSU, another solid player. They added Quay Russaw and James Smith from Alabama. Those two guys will probably be instant starters, and those good players. Hunter Welsing, tight end from Notre Dame, solid player. I love the Terry Moore and Earl Little Jr. Goodness, I love those two additions at safety. I think they'll really work together well in tandem. I think they're one of the two better safeties in the nation. I think this probably gives Ohio State maybe the best safety duo in college football. And those are the main ones. Like, it's nothing flashy, but it's all impactful and it's good. Similar to Notre Dame's. But I have a ton of concerns about Ohio State. And look, these guys that are going to get playing time next season that are younger, who have to come and step in where all these guys have left, they could be amazing. Ohio State recruits well, so they could be amazing. But you have to acknowledge that there's a possibility that they are not. And that will really hurt Ohio State. At 3, these are the 3 that I think could be disgusting next season. And I feel like one of these could blow up in my face big time, and it's the team that I have at number 3. Because this team should be a top 3 team. They should be a national title contender. But we've played this game with this team in the past, and it's the Oregon Ducks. Look, there is no denying that Dante Moore coming back is a big deal. There's no denying that. He's a really good player. Okay, plus they'll still have Evan Stewart. They'll still have DeCorian Moore, who are 2 elite wide receivers. Now they are losing some on the offensive line. They're losing Emmanuel Pregnon. They're losing Isaiah World. Amari Washington at defensive tackle. He's coming back. That's a big deal. Okay, Mateo Uyunglele. He's coming back at edge. That's also a big deal. I think Bear Alexander's also coming back. That's also a big deal. That will really help that defensive line stay very good. They are losing Dylan Theineman. That'll be a hit. I really like Dylan Theineman. I think he's a really good player. They are bringing in Coy Parrish, though, who has a ton of potential. And they did some good things in the transfer portal. I don't think they did anything crazy. Coy Parrish and Iverson Hooks were, I think, the big names that they brought in, other than Dylan Raiola, who's just a backup. Iverson Hooks is a wide receiver out of UAB. I think Oregon should be a national title contender next season. They're going to have an amazing defensive line, one of the best in the country. Offensive line, I'm a little worried about. Obviously, Dante Moore is a big deal. He's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He has a great receiving core around him. They just need to keep him upright, and they need to play better defense. That's the key. And Dan Lanning has to coach better in big games. It will kill them if he does not do that. But let's get to my 1 and 2 teams, huh? Who do I have at 2? That is the question. I made fun of this team a lot last season. I did. And for good reason. But I always said that I did not understand why this team was getting so much hype last season, because I said last season I think they're a year away from being really, really good and really dangerous. And I think I'm 100% right after looking at this roster. It's the Texas Longhorns. I tried to tell everyone, and it made zero sense, that Texas was being so highly rated in everyone's preseason top 10, top 25, whatever. People had them, pretty much everyone had them top 3. Not me, by the way, but pretty much everyone else did. And it didn't make any sense to me. I said, you haven't seen Arch Manning do anything of substance, and you just think he's just going to be all world. And then look what happened. He wasn't. Now he got better as the season went on. And I think partially the offensive line at Texas was not very good. I also think he didn't have a ton of weapons around him to the level that he should have. I think Sark is an overrated offensive play caller. I think he's an overrated head coach. But I think this team has so much talent going into next season. Okay? Obviously, the big one is Cam Coleman. I think Cam Coleman can rival Jeremiah Smith. I really do think that. I think Cam Coleman is that good. You just don't see it because he was in purgatory at Auburn. Which he never should have went to Auburn, by the way. Should have came to Georgia, buddy. But you know what? I'm not salty. Hollywood Smothers is a big pickup for them. They desperately needed a running back, so the fact that they were able to flip him from Alabama was massive for them. Getting a guy like Rasheem Biles in there at running back when you're losing a guy like Anthony Hill, that's very important for them. He's a veteran. He's played a ton of games. Raleek Brown also at running back, so at least now you have a tandem with Hollywood Smothers. Bo Masco, a very good corner from Rutgers. What I don't really understand, I will say, is the fact that they fired their defensive coordinator. And look, I like Muschamp. I think he's a good defensive coordinator, but I don't think your defense was the problem last season. I think your offensive line is a problem, and I'm not convinced it's going to be better next season. We'll see. I just think everything else is a lot better. I think the defense will still be really good, as it usually is with Texas. And, Muschamp's a really good defensive coordinator. But, look, my issue with Texas is I think they're going to have typical Texas games like always. They're going to have 1 or 2 games this season, like they always do, where it's like, what are they doing? Where they just are terrible. And that could lose them some games. It's what happened to them this past season. They had a terrible loss to Florida. And it's just, they got to get it together. They got to get it together. They got to be more consistent. Arch Manning cannot have down performances. He has to keep improving like we saw last season. And he needs to not start out the gate slow again. Okay? That game against Ohio State is going to be so important. It's going to tell us everything we need to know, okay? Because that's what it did last season. I told you, after watching Ohio State, Texas last season, I told you neither one of those teams was winning the national championship. I told you Julian Sand and Arch Manning didn't look impressive, and it bared out. That's exactly what happened the rest of the season. So that game will tell us everything we need to know about Texas and obviously about Ohio State. Texas needs to win. I'm going to be honest. Texas needs to win that game. It's at home. You need to win it. You need to win it because I think you have the better football team. Plain and simple. And at number 1, I could not do it. You know me. I could not do it. It's the Georgia Bulldogs. And look, I think there is good reason to put Georgia at 1, okay? Now, I'm not saying they're like the only team who should be 1, okay? I would understand if someone put Texas at 1. I would understand if someone put Oregon at 1. Heck, I'd understand if someone put Ohio State at 1, okay? Here's the thing with Georgia. They were a very young team last season. And the fact that they were able to look at one point, people were saying they look like the best team in the country, I think is a testament to Kirby Smart's coaching and how good these young players are. I was so happy with the way Ellis Robinson progressed at corner. I feel so confident about him being our number one corner going into next season. And I think what we saw in the transfer portal is exactly what I was hoping to see to an extent. I kind of wish we did get one more receiver, but what it tells me with the fact that we only got Isaiah Canyon, who's a good player, he's going to be the big body guy, really good in the red zone. He's a good player. I like the addition. What it tells me is that Georgia really likes the young receivers they have in there. They really like a guy like Talon Taylor, like Thomas Blackshear, like CJ Wiley. All right. I've heard really good things about the two current true freshmen that they brought in. I've heard really good things already about both of them. I like the Bryson Beaver quarterback edition. I really do. I think he has a ton of potential. But what I love most is what they did in the defensive back room with the transfer portal class. The additions. I'm telling you right now, if Georgia wins a national championship, it will be, I promise you right now, it will be because of the additions of Gentry Williams, Jamarly Riddle, and Khalil Barnes. I am telling you right now. Okay? Because the reality is that this defensive back room, and I have come on here and I've ranted about it, I don't know how many times for the past 2 seasons, this defensive back room has been so inconsistent and at times awful. Okay? KJ Bolden is a very good player. He's a very good safety. But he needs someone on the other side of him. He needs it. Ja'Cory Thomas is a good player. But with our defensive backs, someone's going to get hurt. And you need depth. And that was our issue. We didn't have the depth. I'm worried about DeMello Jones if he is going to be our other corner. But I think it's good that we brought in guys like a Gentry Williams, who he's listed as a safety, but he plays more of a corner type of role. Khalil Barnes has played nickel corner before, although I think Khalil Barnes will be the safety opposite of KJ Bolden. And it's not just you brought in these guys, you brought in experienced guys like Khalil Barnes and Gentry Williams. The Jamarly Riddle, I have been hearing that Georgia loves Jamarly Riddle and that they think that he has the potential to be special. Dante Dowdle is a sneaky pickup running back from Kentucky. He's a big body guy. He'll kind of be like our Josh McCray, but he's way faster and way more agile. Sign me up. And then what might be actually my favorite pickup is Amaris Williams, defensive lineman from Auburn. Georgia, early on in the season, really struggled with pass rush. We didn't get many sacks. We didn't rush the passer well enough. And part of that was because, number one, we didn't have good depth. And number two, we didn't have twitch. We didn't have twitchy guys. That is what Amaris Williams brings. That's what he is. And he's a guy with multiple years of eligibility left. And we're bringing back pretty much our entire edge group. Gabe Harris is coming back. Quintavious Johnson, he'll be back. Plus, adding Amaris Williams to that group and some of the younger guys we have, I think the pass rush will improve. I think Georgia will always have a good linebacker room. I truly believe we are linebacker university. I mean, we get like it. I feel like we average 1 5-star linebacker every recruiting cycle. I mean, we are stuffed to the brim full of linebackers, amazing linebackers, and some of them we turn into edge rushers. So, like a Zayden Walker, for example. I think this team will be really good. as long as they develop correctly. And I think Georgia can win the national championship next season. Obviously, I think that. And I think the schedule is good for Georgia. I like the way their schedule plays out. I think it's good that they don't have. Yeah, they go to Alabama, but I at least like that. Um, neither team gets a bye before that game because I've noticed Alabama plays really well when they come off a bye. Under Kalen DeBoer is really good coming off a bye. Let me tell you. So I like that we're not coming off a bye for that game. We'll see how it goes, though. I think Georgia is way more talented than Alabama for this upcoming season, but we'll see. I've hoped. I've hoped. Also, the fact that the main thing Georgia was focusing on was not trying to get a ton of guys in from the transfer portal. It was keeping the guys they already have because they love the guys they already have. And that makes me feel confident. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I will be back next week for another episode. Do not forget to go out there and be great.